If you've ever spent your life watching the clock, checking the time, setting alarms, or planning your day, you've definitely encountered something so familiar that you've probably never questioned it. Those two small labels, AM and PM, they appear everywhere on wall clocks, phone screens, flight tickets, calendars, and digital displays. They're so common that most of us rarely stop to ask what they actually mean. Yet behind these simple letters lies a story shaped by astronomy, ancient civilizations, Roman traditions, and humanity's long effort to bring order to time itself. Today, we're uncovering why the day is divided into AM and PM, how this system began, and why much of the world still uses it, even though a 24-hour clock exists. To understand AM and PM, we need to go back to a time when life was ruled entirely by the sun. Long before mechanical clocks existed, people measured time by observing daylight, sunrise, sunset, and the moment the sun reached its highest point in the sky. That midpoint of the day was critical. It guided farming, religious rituals, navigation, and daily survival. The ancient Egyptians were among the first to divide daylight into sections using sundials, splitting the day into 12 parts based on moving shadows. But it was the Romans who transformed these observations into formal language. Since Latin was the language of administration, religion, and daily life, it naturally became the foundation for timekeeping terms. This brings us to the meaning behind the letters themselves. AM comes from the Latin phrase ante meridiem, meaning before midday. PM comes from post meridiem, meaning after midday. The idea is straightforward. The day is split into two halves by the moment the sun reaches its highest point. From midnight until just before noon, time falls into the before midday period. From noon until just before the next midnight, it belongs to the after midday period. This division is based on the sun crossing an invisible line called the meridian, vertical path stretching from the North Pole to the South Pole. When the sun crosses this line, solar noon occurs. In this sense, AM and PM are simply descriptions of the sun's movement across the sky. There's one detail that confuses almost everyone. Why is 12 p.m. considered noon, and 12 a.m. considered midnight? Logically, noon seems like it should be neither before nor after midday. That's true. By strict definition, noon and midnight don't perfectly fit into either category. But timekeeping systems require consistency. Throughout history, there were attempts to fix this. Some clocks used the words noon and midnight instead of AM and PM. Certain railway systems labeled midnight as 0 o'clock and noon as 12 meters. However, global convention eventually won. Noon became 12 p.m. because the hours after it moved into the post-midday period. Midnight became 12 a.m. because it marks the beginning of the hours before midday. It may not be mathematically perfect, but it's the standard the world agreed upon. Of course, the 12-hour system isn't universal. Many countries use the 24-hour clock, often called military time. In this format, the day runs continuously from 0 o'clock to 23:59. Midnight is 0 o'clock, noon is 12 o'clock. And instead of saying 8 p.m., you say 20 o'clock. It's clear, efficient, and widely used in Europe, Asia, aviation, medicine, and science. So why do some countries still rely on AM and PM? The answer lies in habit and history. For centuries, analog clocks were built around a 12-hour cycle. This format aligns naturally with human rhythms tied to daylight and darkness. Even with digital technology, many cultures never felt a strong need to change. Latin terminology also remained because English borrowed heavily from Latin during its early development in science, religion, and education. Timekeeping was largely managed by churches and astronomers, both of whom depended on Latin. By the time clocks and schedules became standardized, AM and PM were already firmly established. As English-speaking nations expanded through trade, colonization, and technology, this system spread worldwide. That's why even in countries that now prefer the 24-hour clock, AM and PM still appear in historical records, traditional texts, and older buildings. In the end, AM and PM are more than labels on a clock. They're living pieces of history, echoes of ancient skywatchers, Roman scholars, sundial makers, and early scientists who shaped how the modern world understands time. The next time you set an alarm or plan a late-night meeting, remember that you're using a system older than modern nations, older than most languages, and far older than the technology that depends on a tall preserved in two simple Latin phrases, ante-meridiem and post-meridiem. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this journey, explore more stories hidden inside the smallest details, and stay tuned for what comes next.